Trade wars are good and easy to win, President Trump tweeting early Friday morning. Today, the lawmaker he needs to pass the steel and aluminum tariffs to fight that war, House Speaker Paul Ryan, said no. Quote, "We are extremely worried about the consequences of a trade war and are urging the White House to not advance with this plan," the statement from his spokeswoman read. Keeping him honest, you would think if this were so easy, you'd at least have your own party leaders on board. If this were easy, conservative economists would be lining up to support it. They are not. You need industry support, but aside from steel and aluminum makers, it hasn't happened so far. The Beer Institute CEO says aluminum tariffs would cost the beverage industry $347 million and lead to thousands of layoffs. Goldman Sachs estimates a steel tariff could cost Ford and General Motors $1 billion a year. If a trade war were easy, there'd be no threat of retaliation on American products. If it were easy, the head of the European Commission would not be saying this.
So now we will also impose import tariffs. This is basically a stupid process, the fact that we have to do this. But we have to do it. We will now impose tariffs on motorcycles, Harley Davidson, on blue jeans, Levi's, on bourbon. We can also do stupid. We also have to be this stupid.
Well, that was Friday night. By Saturday, President Trump tweeted an answer, retaliate on cars. Quote, "We will simply apply a tax on their cars which freely pour into the U.S." Just one problem, BMW and Mercedes, they actually make and sell more than 500,000 vehicles in this country, in red states, no import duties on them. U.S.-owned GM, on the other hand, imports about a quarter of the cars that it sells here, so GM would be hurt. If you're thinking by now that this smacks of a president who hasn't really thought this through very well, that's exactly how it happened. As we and others have reported, when the president launched this, he was winging it. That said, the White House is not backing down.
There was a study released today showing that this would be the president's proposals, a net loss of 146,000 jobs. Has the White House studied how many jobs may be lost or created because of his policies?
Look, this is something the president is committed to doing, and he feels that both our national security are vitally important in this process, and we have to be able to have these industries to protect that, and so that's a big part of the goal.
No study? Sure.
I'm not going to say that we're not looking at every facet of this, because we certainly are. It's been a very thoughtful and long process, but that is the focus of the decision that he's making.
Two views now from two former White House insiders, CNN's Axe-Files host David Axelrod and CNN senior political analyst David Gergen. David Gergen, when the president is unpredictable and inconsistent, how much more difficult does it make, the already difficult process of governing?
Hugely, almost impossible. Anderson, it sounds old-fashioned to say, but trust remains the coin of the realm in politics, as in many other professions. If a leader wants to have others follow him in difficult times, they've got to trust him. Trust what he says, that it's honest. Trust that what he says he believes, and he's going to say the same thing tomorrow and not change his mind the next 24 hours. And trust that he'll keep his promises. And Donald Trump right now, I'm sorry to say, is right at the bottom on all of those metrics.
David Axelrod, Senator Schumer is obviously no fan of the president, said back in January that negotiating with President Trump is like negotiating with Jell-O. Based on what we've seen, he doesn't seem to be wrong there.
No, he doesn't. And look, I think what happened just in this latest series of events is that he painted himself into a corner on this issue of guns, saying one thing at that public session and then getting lectured by the NRA in private. And he wanted to change the subject, and so he prematurely ran out with this trade announcement that wasn't ready, that defied the advice of most of his economic and national security advisors, that was light on details. You had the spectacle of the Secretary of Commerce appearing on a Sunday show saying he didn't really know what the details of this latest trade edict from the president would be on tariffs. How is the world supposed to calibrate its decisions based on these kinds of things? So he is behaving as if he's still in a campaign. You know, the trade issue was a great issue for him in the campaign, probably even more than immigration in terms of arousing his base. But now he's president of the United States. There are real consequences to these statements and actions, and he doesn't seem to appreciate that.
Yeah, and David Gergen, Sarah Sanders today, when she was pressed about the details of what the final tariffs are going to look like, she could really only say that she doesn't want to get ahead of the president, which seems to increasingly translate to we have no idea what he's going to do.
I think that's right, Anderson. We've never had a president that's so unpredictable. That's not to say he's not doing some things right for the country. It's not to say he's wrong on everything. But when it comes to trying to win the trust of others, starting here at home, but very importantly, other nations, you have to be consistent. You have to tell the truth. And if people feel they're not, then with the North Koreans, for example, it's very subject to miscalculation. Neither side really wants a conflict, but they could easily stumble into it because of misstatements, of promises not kept. And the same thing is now happening to the president on guns, on DACA, and now we see on tariffs. The Republican Party is not willing to follow him where they don't want to go. And Speaker Ryan breaking with the president today, that's really was quite a stunning statement.
Well, I mean, David Axelrod,
let me
yeah, go ahead.
Let me just say, the thing that's unsettling about this is as serious as a global trade war might be, we're also in this very, very frayed situation with the North Koreans. And we heard last week that the president was that the Pentagon was involved in tabletop exercises simulating various scenarios of conflict with North Korea, all of which were apparently quite catastrophic. You can't casually slide into these things, and you don't want to be misinterpreted.
It's also, David Gergen, so fascinating because it's so at odds with how he portrayed himself during the campaign as always hiring the best people, as knowing how to run a major organization. I mean, from the get-go, the way the White House was organized was unlike any other White House. And every former chief of staff I talked to, I'm sure you and I talked about this, pointed out this is not going to work. It can't work unless everybody has clear lanes of authority and influence.
I agree. You can't sort of run an ad hoc government. And very importantly, Anderson, it's very difficult to attract highly talented people, and I think the White House is now in something of a crisis because it knows a lot of people are leaving, but it's hard to identify the people who are coming, and that makes the next few months particularly unpredictable for the country, because if you've got inexperienced people, the experienced people don't want to go. They don't want to get involved. That's why some people, young people, are bailing out of the administration. They know they can't get jobs if they stay too long. They'll be honored in some parts of the country, but in other parts of the country, they go, I don't think you belong in this organization. And that's just really hard. When you get to twice as many people are leaving this White House as any other White House in the time he's been in office, and with more to come. And it just means that the United States government, which is supposed to be the Rock of Gibraltar, the country that people look to for stability, the country that people look to for protection, when people no longer think they can trust you, they will turn elsewhere, like toward the Chinese.
David Gergen, David Axelrod, guys, thanks very much.